The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, casting a cold, sterile
Gana.
glow throughout the bustling downtown precinct in Greenwood Springs. 8-year-old Ava Thompson sat quietly on a rigid plastic chair in the crowded waiting room, her small fingers wrapped tightly around a worn dog tag
Anos.
that hung from a fraying cord around her neck. Her scuffed sneakers barely touched the linoleum floor as she gently swung her legs back and forth, the rhythmic motion, a fragile attempt to calm the storm inside her chest. Her mother, Laura, stood nervously at the counter, speaking in hushed tones with the desk sergeant about the recent break-in at their apartment. They took the television. My laptop, Laura explained, her voice trembling under the weight of exhaustion and disbelief. But thank God Ava was at school. Though Laura's words filled the room, Ava's attention was nowhere near the conversation. Instead, her world had shrunk to the small piece of metal she clutched, a battered dog tag, its worn edges smooth beneath her thumb, the embossed letters offering a silent refuge from the chaos around her. Across the room, Officer Blake Daniels leaned against the counter, arms crossed over his broad chest, his gaze sharp and dismissive as it settled on the young girl's intense focus. With a mocking smirk tugging at his lips, he pushed himself off the desk and sauntered toward her. "What's that you got there, kid?" He sneered, voice carrying a sharp edge that cut through the murmurs of the room. Ava looked up slowly, her large hazel eyes solemn and steady. "It's my daddy's," she whispered. "He was in the Army. A hero, huh?" Officer Daniels chuckled loud enough for others nearby to hear. "Every guy in boots thinks he's a hero." A few officers nearby snickered, the sound echoing harshly in the sterile room. Ava's grip on the dog tag tightened until her knuckles turned white, but she said nothing. She lowered her eyes back to the worn metal, shielding it from the unkind stares. "Bet you don't even know his rank," Daniels pressed, crouching slightly to her level, a cruel smile curling on his lips. "Master Sergeant," Ava said quietly without hesitation. "Thomas Thompson." For a brief moment, the smirk faltered on Daniel's face, replaced by a flicker of surprise. Then a bark of laughter escaped him. "Sure, kid. And I'm the president." Laura turned sharply from the counter, her face paling, as she hurried over to Ava's side, placing a protective hand gently on her daughter's shoulder. "Come on, sweetheart," she murmured, guiding Ava toward a bench along the far wall. Ava sat stiffly, her back straight and her fingers never loosening their hold on the dog tag. Around them, the precinct buzzed with activity, phones ringing, officers exchanging quiet conversations, keyboards clicking. Yet for Ava, the world had contracted to that small piece of metal, her lifeline in a sea of indifference. No one noticed the janitor lingering nearby, mop forgotten in the hallway, his gaze fixed thoughtfully on the small, silent figure clutching the dog tag. Laura sat beside Ava, her heart heavy with unspoken words. Ava leaned against her mother, her face unreadable, her fingers curled tightly around the battered token of a father's sacrifice. Laura's hand smoothed over her daughter's hair, her touch gentle but trembling with pain. She wanted to speak, to defend Thomas's honor, to erase the sting of Officer Daniel's cruel laughter, but the words caught in her throat, tangled and useless. Around them, the precinct continued in its unfeeling rhythm, indifferent to the quiet sorrow in the corner. Ava did not cry. She did not fidget. She simply sat, a silent testament to resilience amid disregard. Laura squeezed her daughter's hand gently, marveling at the quiet strength beneath the fragile frame. In the shadowed doorway near the janitor's closet, an older man watched quietly. His gray coveralls hung loosely over a weathered frame, a slight limp marking his measured steps. Henry Lane had mopped these floors for nearly 2 decades, a ghost in the precinct's hum. Few officers acknowledged him beyond the occasional nod. But Henry was more than a janitor. 2 tours overseas had carved lines into his face and etched a heavy weight into his gait. He heard Daniel's cruel words echoing the name Thompson, stirring a memory long buried, a name that commanded respect in forgotten circles. Henry placed his mop carefully against the wall, pulling an aged flip phone from his pocket. With fingers stiffened by time, he punched a number from memory, stepping into the chill spring air beyond the precinct doors. His voice was low, steady, filled with the quiet authority of a soldier reaching out across years. "Colonel, it's Henry Lane. I'm at the precinct downtown. There's something you need to know." Inside, Laura wrapped Ava in a protective embrace, neither noticing how the atmosphere in the station shifted imperceptibly, a current of change stirring beneath the surface. Help was coming, and when it arrived, it would come with the weight of honor long denied. Ava sat quietly on the worn bench beside her mother, Laura the dog tag still clenched tightly in her small hand. The noise of the precinct ringing phones, officers' murmured conversations, the scrape of chairs seemed distant, as if muffled behind a thick glass wall that separated them from the rest of the world. Inside this fragile bubble, Ava's silence spoke volumes. She didn't cry or protest. She simply endured, holding on to the worn metal like a lifeline to a father she barely remembered, but deeply honored. Laura's heart ached as she smoothed strands of her daughter's chestnut hair, her touch gentle yet trembling with exhaustion and unspoken sorrow. She wanted to shield Ava from the harshness around them, from the casual cruelty of Officer Daniels and the cold indifference that had settled like a shadow over the precinct. But the harsh reality was impossible to escape here, where respect was fleeting and empathy rare. The waiting room's chatter and footsteps swirled around them, but no one approached. No one offered comfort. Outside the circle of officers and civilians bustling through their day, Henry Lane remained a silent sentinel. His mop leaned forgotten against the wall, eyes sharp despite his age, and the limp that slowed his steps. The memory of Thomas Thompson, the master sergeant, whose dog tag Ava held, stirred within him like a long dormant flame. Henry understood the weight of loss and honor better than most in the building. He knew what it meant to carry invisible scars and to witness the erosion of respect. The precinct's fluorescent lights flickered faintly, casting cold shadows on the linoleum floor. Ava's small frame stoic and still became a quiet symbol of resilience amid the indifference. The worn dog tag lay between her fingers, its metal edges smoothed by years of touch, as if absorbing the strength that Ava drew from it. She sat, straight-backed shoulders squared, a stark contrast to the slouched postures and dismissive glances of those around her. On social media, a hashtag had already begun to circulate, "Who is Master Sergeant Thompson?" Some mocked, some questioned, but few understood the depth of sacrifice behind the name. In the precinct's walls, whispers floated, questions unasked, judgments unspoken. Ava's ordeal was reduced to a viral sensation, a moment of spectacle rather than a call for respect. Henry's gaze flickered toward the windows, where the early spring wind stirred the bare branches outside. The chill in the air seemed to echo the coldness inside. Yet beneath his quiet exterior, a determination was growing. He wasn't just a janitor here. He was a witness to history, a keeper of legacies forgotten by time, and he would not let Ava's father's name be diminished by ignorance or cruelty. Laura glanced up, catching Henry's steady eyes before he slipped quietly down the hallway, his figure blending into the precinct's hum. She squeezed Ava's hand once more, a silent promise to protect her daughter's dignity in a world that seemed eager to forget. As the afternoon light waned and shadows lengthened across the precinct floor, Ava remained steadfast, a small figure of quiet strength amid a sea of indifference, holding tight to a legacy that refused to be erased. Outside, unseen by most, change was already beginning. Ava's quiet strength had not gone unnoticed. As the precinct's noise swirled around her, and her mother, Henry Lane, stood silently in a corner, mop set aside. The weight of the moment pressed on him, a memory reawakened by the sight of the worn dog tag and the girl's unwavering grip. With deliberate care, Henry reached into his pocket and pulled out an old flip phone, its worn edges a testament to years past. His fingers, stiff with age but steady in resolve, punched in a number he had long memorized. Stepping outside into the chill of the early spring afternoon, Henry pressed the phone to his ear, his breath visible in the crisp air. The sounds of the precinct faded behind him, replaced by the distant hum of city life and the soft rustle of budding leaves. His voice, low and steady, carried the weight of years spent in service. "Colonel Hawthorne, it's Henry Lane. I'm at the downtown precinct. There's something you need to hear." On the other end of the line, a pause lingered, heavy with unspoken understanding. Then came the firm reply, resolute and without hesitation, "I'll be there." Henry exhaled slowly, the tension momentarily lifting from his shoulders. He pocketed the phone and turned back toward the glass doors of the station. Inside, Laura held Ava close, neither aware of the ripple of change about to wash over the precinct. The rhythm of the station, the ringing phones, the chatter of officers, the clatter of keyboards continued, oblivious to the gathering storm of honor and reckoning. Henry re-entered mop in hand, but now moved with purpose, his gaze flickering between the mother and daughter and the street beyond the windows. Minutes stretched thick with anticipation. Then cutting through the afternoon light, headlights pierced the precinct's windows, a sleek black car pulling up steadily to the curb. The door opened with quiet precision and a tall figure stepped out, Colonel Stephen Hawthorne. Even in civilian clothes, his presence was unmistakable. Broad shoulders squared beneath a crisp coat, every ribbon and medal gleaming in the fading light. His posture spoke of decades of discipline and sacrifice, his boots clicking against the pavement with a measured rhythm that commanded attention. Henry moved to open the precinct door, holding it with a nod exchanged between two soldiers bound by a shared past. Colonel Hawthorne entered without pause, the low murmur of the precinct falling into a hush as eyes instinctively turned toward him. He did not glance at the curious faces or the officers whispering in corners. Instead, his gaze swept deliberately across the room until it settled on a small figure seated against the far wall, Ava Thompson. With the surety of a man who had faced countless battles, Colonel Hawthorne strode forward, each step resonating like a heartbeat through the linoleum. The precinct's usual hum faltered, breaths caught mid-sentence as the weight of his presence filled the space. Ava's eyes met his wide and unblinking, the dog tag still clutched in her hand. Colonel Hawthorne paused precisely 3 feet before her, then came to attention and saluted, a gesture of profound respect and recognition. The room held its collective breath, the silence swelling with the gravity of the moment. Ava, hesitant but steady, slowly released the dog tag and rose to her feet, embodying a quiet dignity that transcended her years. Colonel Hawthorne lowered his salute and knelt to meet her at eye level, his voice clear and strong. Ava, Master Sergeant Thomas Thompson was more than a hero. He was my mentor, my commander, and my friend. Across the precinct, the air shifted. Officer Daniels, once smug and dismissive, sat frozen, the color draining from his face. The room's focus was drawn into a shared reverence, an invisible line of respect drawn in that very moment. Colonel Hawthorne reached into his breast pocket and produced a folded black and white photograph. With gentle hands, he unfolded it, revealing a formation of soldiers standing firm with Thomas Thompson poised at their center. Ava's trembling fingers traced the image, bridging the years and distance between past and present. The colonel's voice softened, yet carried the undeniable strength of truth. He shaped men like me, saved lives, and left a legacy that lives on in every soldier who had the honor to learn from him. For a long moment, the precinct was suspended in awe, held captive by the weight of history and honor, finally given its due. As Colonel Hawthorne rose, standing beside Ava, like a steadfast guardian, his gaze swept the room and rested on Officer Daniels. The smirk was gone, replaced by the heavy silence of reckoning. The colonel's words cut through the stillness. "You mock the daughter of a man who led warriors, who trained leaders, and who never left a soldier behind." Daniels opened his mouth to speak, but found no words. The shame was palpable, settling over him like a shroud. Colonel Hawthorne turned back to Ava and with care placed a polished medal encased in glass into her small hands. "This belongs to you now." Ava's lips trembled, her eyes filled with tears that spoke more than words ever could. Laura pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed by the honor restored in that quiet precinct lobby. Around them, officers began to rise, each offering a silent salute or nod, a new respect blossoming where once there had been mockery. Change, though unseen before, had now arrived. The precinct's usual rhythm faltered as Colonel Stephen Hawthorne's presence transformed the room into a solemn stage of honor and reckoning. His polished boots echoed deliberately against the linoleum floor, each step commanding attention, drawing every eye, even those that had moments before dismissed the small girl clutching her father's dog tag. The harsh fluorescent light seemed to dim, softened by the weight of history that filled the space. Ava Thompson stood quietly beside her mother, Laura, her small hands still wrapped around the polished metal the colonel had placed gently in her palm. Her wide hazel eyes reflected a mixture of awe and newfound pride as the room's atmosphere shifted from cold indifference to reverent silence. The officers and civilians who had once snickered or looked away now found themselves united in a shared moment of respect. At the far edge of the room, Officer Blake Daniels sat rigid, his earlier smirk vanished, replaced by a pale, hollow expression. The invisible tide had turned against him. The weight of the colonel's unwavering gaze and the silent judgment of the room settled heavily on his shoulders. For the first time that afternoon, he seemed small and unsure, caught in the gravity of his own cruelty. From the shadows emerged Captain Melissa Green, the precinct commander, her immaculate uniform crisp, and her expression steely with authority. Her measured footsteps echoed softly but firmly, signaling a new chapter in the precinct's story. Officers instinctively straightened, sensing the significance of her arrival. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the solemn scene, the colonel, the girl, the mother, and the subdued crowd of witnesses. Without hesitation, Captain Green approached Ava and Laura, her presence both commanding and compassionate. She crouched down to Ava's eye level, her voice calm, but edged with resolve. "Miss Thompson," she began, "I have watched the security footage from my office. I saw how you were treated today, and I saw who stood silent while it happened." Ava's fingers tightened around the metal, clutching it like a shield. Laura's breath caught her eyes, searching the captain's face for words unspoken. Captain Green's gaze shifted to Officer Daniels, who flinched under her scrutiny. "You deserved better," she continued softly, "and so did your father." The room seemed to exhale collectively, the tension easing into something heavier, an acknowledgement of past wrongs, and a promise for change. Standing straight again, the captain addressed the assembled officers, her voice ringing clear and firm. "We train our recruits in the skills of the badge, how to protect, how to serve. But today I remind you that true strength is also found in respect. Respect for those who have sacrificed, respect for those who carry their legacy, and respect for the dignity of every person who walks through these doors." She turned back to Ava, offering a warm, steady smile. "We would be honored if you would visit our academy to speak with our new cadets and teach them about the strength your father lived and the courage you carry." Ava hesitated for only a moment before slipping her small hand into the captain's, her grip firm with quiet pride. Laura's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, a mixture of relief and hope blooming within her. From behind the front desk, Officer Daniels watched the exchange with hollow eyes. The laughter that had echoed so cruelly earlier was replaced by silence, an absence more profound than words. The weight of the day's reckoning settled over him, and he sat motionless, his earlier arrogance replaced by the heavy burden of shame. The precinct's atmosphere had irrevocably changed. Respect long denied now stood palpable in the air. Ava's silence had spoken louder than any argument, teaching a lesson in dignity and resilience none present would soon forget. As the afternoon light faded outside, a new chapter was quietly unfolding within these walls, one where honor was reclaimed and the true legacy of Master Sergeant Thomas Thompson would finally be recognized and carried forward. The day of reckoning settled deeply into the precinct's very walls as a quiet hush spread among those gathered. Ava Thompson stood by her mother's side, the polished metal resting gently in her small hands, a tangible symbol of the honor finally bestowed upon her father's memory. Around them, officers and staff shifted uneasily, the weight of truth settling like a heavy fog in the room. Colonel Stephen Hawthorne, still at Ava's side, bent low once more, retrieving a black and white photograph from his coat pocket. With reverence, he unfolded the image to reveal a tightly knit group of soldiers standing in formation. At the center stood Master Sergeant Thomas Thompson, his posture strong, his gaze steady, a figure etched forever in the annals of courage and leadership. "This," the colonel began, his voice steady, yet filled with profound respect, "is the man who shaped men like me, who saved lives under fire, and who refused to leave any soldier behind. He was the kind of leader who stood tall when others faltered, who moved forward when fear gripped those around him." Ava's trembling fingers traced the photograph's edges, as if reaching across time to touch her father's spirit. The room held its breath, each person feeling the gravity of sacrifice and dedication captured in that single image. Colonel Hawthorne's gaze swept the room before settling on Officer Blake Daniels. "You laughed at the daughter of a man whose lessons echo through the ranks of those who now command divisions, wear stars on their shoulders, and lead with honor every day." Daniel's face flushed, his mouth opening in a feeble attempt to respond, but no words came. The shame was a heavy cloak, undeniable and suffocating. Turning back to Ava, the colonel knelt again, placing a small glass-encased medal into her hands. "This belonged to your father, earned through bravery and sacrifice. It belongs with you now, a reminder that his legacy lives on in you. Tears welled in Ava's eyes as she clutched the medal close to her heart. Laura pressed a trembling hand to her chest, overwhelmed by the justice unfolding quietly but powerfully before her. Around the room, officers rose one by one, each offering a solemn salute or a respectful nod. The shift from mockery to honor was complete, a silent acknowledgement of lessons learned and respect earned. As the moment lingered, the precinct commander, Captain Melissa Green, stepped forward with purposeful grace. Her voice was calm but resolute as she addressed the gathered officers. We have failed in our duty not just to the memory of Master Sergeant Thompson, but to the values we uphold as protectors of this community. She paused, letting her words settle. Starting today, we will teach our recruits not only how to wield a badge and a weapon, but how to carry themselves with dignity and respect, to honor those who came before, and to stand firm against disrespect in all its forms. Captain Green turned to Ava with a gentle smile. You, Miss Thompson, will help us shape this change. We invite you to share your story with our new cadets, to teach them the quiet strength your father lived and the courage you carry. Ava nodded solemnly, her small hand slipping into the captain's as a symbol of hope and renewal. Laura's eyes shone with tears of gratitude, a mother's faith rekindled. In the weeks that followed, the precinct transformed. Officer Daniels, once a source of ridicule, was reassigned to lead a new community outreach and veteran respect training program. He spoke openly of his mistakes, urging recruits to learn from his failings. At the precinct's Veterans Day ceremony, a framed photograph of Master Sergeant Thompson was unveiled, accompanied by a simple plaque. He taught leaders to serve and the brave to stand taller. Ava stood proudly beside it, her dog tag resting once again in her hand, not as a symbol of pain but of pride. Colonel Hawthorne visited often, sharing stories of Thomas Thompson's life beyond the battlefield, stories of humility, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication to others. One quiet evening, standing before her father's photograph, Ava whispered softly, "I'll make you proud, Daddy." And in the silent spaces between heartbeats and memories, the legacy of Master Sergeant Thomas Thompson lived on, strong, unbroken, shining quietly in every soul he had touched. A hero never forgotten. Months passed since that solemn day in the precinct, yet the lessons etched into the walls and hearts of Greenwood Springs officers remain vivid and enduring. Every Veterans Day, the main hall of the downtown station held a quiet tribute, a single empty chair draped with a polished dog tag engraved with the name Thomas Thompson. No speeches were made, no ceremonies announced. Officers paused in respectful silence as they passed, some offering a brief salute, others bowing their heads in quiet reverence. It was a tradition born from humility and remembrance, a legacy quietly preserved. At the police academy, a new module had been introduced for every recruit, a dedicated hour, to learn not just the tactics of law enforcement, but the meaning of honor, dignity, and silent strength. The story of Master Sergeant Thompson was woven into their training, not as a tale of battlefield glory alone, but as a lesson in character and courage. His legacy was no longer confined to history books. It lived in the minds and hearts of those preparing to serve. Among those leading this transformation was former officer Blake Daniels, now tasked with guiding cadets through the new Respect and Veteran Support Program. He spoke openly about his mistakes, sharing his journey from ignorance to understanding. Real heroes don't demand recognition, he often told his students, and sometimes the bravest souls are the smallest ones among us. His candidness became a powerful tool for change, inspiring others to listen, learn, and grow. At home, Ava Thompson continued to wear her father's dog tag, but its meaning had evolved. What was once a fragile tether to grief had become a symbol of pride, strength, and hope. She carried it not as a burden, but as a beacon, reminding her and those around her of the enduring power of honor. Colonel Stephen Hawthorne remained a steadfast presence in their lives, often visiting to share stories that revealed new facets of Thomas Thompson, the man who had lived his values every day. Through laughter and tears, these moments became threads in a tapestry of remembrance and healing. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ava stood before her father's framed photograph in the precinct lobby. The warm glow of the setting sun filtered through the windows, casting long shadows and bathing the room in soft light. She reached out, fingers brushing the image gently, and whispered with quiet determination, "I'll make you proud, Daddy." In that tender moment, the legacy of Master Sergeant Thomas Thompson shone brighter than ever, strong, unbreakable, and alive. It radiated not through grand gestures or loud proclamations, but through every silent act of respect, every choice to stand with dignity, and every heart touched by his story. The hero's journey did not end with sacrifice. It blossomed in the lives he changed, the lessons he left behind, and the quiet strength that carried forward an unending tribute to a man who would never be forgotten.